In this video, I'm going to be reviewing not one, but two Leonardo Momento Zero Grande fountain pens with the large number 8 nib. I'll go over the specs, I will do a writing sample, and I'll tell you what I like and don't like about these pens coming up. Blake here with Blake's Broadcast. On this channel, I review fountain pens, paper, and ink, and as always, I put links in the show notes in the description below. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps out my channel. Alright, let's get on with the review. So here I have two pens from Leonardo. Now, Leonardo is a brand I have not covered on this channel, and it's one that's pretty new to me. Now, Leonardo was started by the original founder of the Delta Pen Company out of Italy, and I believe his children run this brand. Now let me know if any of this is wrong, but they say they've sort of been in the pen world for 45 years, and that would really be them dating themselves back to the Delta years. Now, as someone that's been in the fountain pen world for some time, this is a brand that's relatively new to me. You know, I've been aware of it for maybe the last decade, but when I first got into pens, this wasn't a brand that I was really aware of. If you guys know when Leonardo made their first pens, I would really be interested to know that. They didn't provide that information on their website, but anyway, let's talk about the pens that I have here. Now, these were both loaned to me graciously from my friend, so thank you very much for doing that. And because they were loaned to me, I'm not going to be doing any crazy writing tests with them, but we will do a writing sample and all that. But let's talk about these pens in particular. Now, this shape, Leonardo calls Momento Zero Grande. So any Leonardo pen that has Momento Zero Grande, abbreviated MZG, typically, that is this shape. And this is a very classic Italian shape, which I think goes back to the 30s with pens like Omas, and many other brands were making pens that kind of look like this. Now, in terms of the pens that we have here, this one is called the Cello Blue, for the Cello Blue resin. That's sky blue, or acrylic. I think it's called acrylic. And this pen has Leonardo's in-house Fenice number 8 nib. Now, this is a very large nib, similar to a Pelican M1000 nib or a Mont Blanc 149 nib. This is a huge nib. It has a big ebonite feed, which is something that is missing from the modern Mont Blanc and Pelican, so I really, really like that. Now, this one here is called the Nuvola, which I believe means cloud in Italian, and this is Nuvola acrylic here, and it's kind of a pale blue with these sort of gold and white stripes. Very nice looking. Both of these I realize are kind of sky themed colors, which I like. I couldn't find the exact details on this one. Interestingly, on the back it says 3 of 4, so this is a very limited edition, I suppose, but I couldn't find the exact model of this. This one, the Cello Blue limited edition that we have here, retails for 575 euros, which comes out to something like a little over $600 and change. And I expect that this one is similarly priced because it has a number 8 nib. It does not have the Fenice design nib, but we'll get into that. Let's just walk through the pen, and we're going to start with the Cello Blue here. And I'll just point out the differences, but otherwise they're pretty much the same pen. In terms of the design, we have these pointy ends, and it's fattest in the middle, and then it tapers towards each of the ends, the top of the cap and the tail of the barrel. And then we have an interesting looking cap ring here. There are 3 rings actually on the cap, and then one below the cap, which I think looks pretty nice. And it's sort of this squarish geometric pattern, which looks really nice. And then we have a very typical Italian roller clip here. It kind of has a bow in the middle, and it looks very nice. One thing I did notice about these pens, and this is just as an Omas person, the clip looks very small. So when I compare it to the large size Omas, and you can just see how big This is an Omas Extra. This would have been their 577 size, their biggest size. The cap rings line up pretty nicely, but the clip is like the exact same size. And these Leonardos are much bigger pens than the Omas. So proportionally, these do look a little bit small, but I don't think without that Omas in my mind, I don't think that they actually look small. They do feel relatively robust, although I will say they are thin. The roller works nicely on them, unlike the Mayora, or however you say it, I reviewed. Overall, my impressions of the build quality of these are really, really good. So now taking the cap off here, it's a screw cap, and here we can see the big Fenice nib. Now, Fenice means phoenix in Italian, and we can see that motif here quite clearly. There are these wings and then what appear to be like beams of light coming out around it, and it says Leonardo 14 karat 585 and extra fine because this is an extra fine nib. Now, it does have a ebonite feed. I believe it's made in-house, and it's a Japanese ebonite. I read, and it's because Leonardo makes so many pens, it's a little bit hard to nail down the exact one. I do believe this is the Cello Blue, and on their website it says that it has a blue ebonite feed, but I don't see that present here, so maybe this is a slightly different version. I don't know exactly, because this looks like black to me. As we can see, it's a huge nib. The piston filling system is made in-house by Leonardo, which I think is really excellent. It has a clicky sound to it, and I'll do it on this Mosaico that's mine, because this doesn't have any ink in it right now. And you can just kind of hear it, maybe. But I can feel it. There's sort of these definite clicks. Now, this is different than the ratcheting system on a Montegrappa. So this is a Montegrappa Extra Auto, and this has a ratcheting piston filler. They don't say that this is ratcheting, but it feels clicky. It feels kind of like winding a mechanical watch. This one has more audible sound when you do it, which I do think, in general, I'd say this has a more premium feel, but as far as piston fillers go, Montegrappa aside, this is one of the nicest feeling because of that clickiness that it has. So I really do like that quite a lot. Now, doing some comparisons here, we can see it with the Nuvolo one. I do not know if this one is a nib that is made in-house by Leonardo. Now, I believe starting at least a couple years ago, all of the gold nibs are made in-house by Leonardo. This one has a more basic design, which more closely matches the Jovo nib on my Mosaico one. So if you look at the picture with these all together, you can see they're quite similar. Now, the shape, of course, is different, but I noticed that the shape of the nibs is different between all of them. So on the Fenice nib, it more tightly wraps around the feed, whereas on the more plain number 8 nib on the Nuvolo, it isn't quite as tight around there. I can't say. They could be the same nib. That could be just some kind of variation. I will also point out that Fenice nib is the stiffer of the two gold nibs. I think the engraving on the Fenice looks nice. It's a little bit busy, a little bit strong, but the impressions are crisp and they look high quality. Whereas on the other two nibs, I would say they look a little bit more laser etched, not the best looking. Now, let's do some comparisons with other pens. You can compare it with a Montblanc 149, a Pelikan M1000 nib. The shape is more closer to the Pelikan, but they are wider overall, and they are basically the same length as all of these, so very long nibs. Now let's do some measurements. One thing that I do think is kind of interesting is that all of the Leonardos are slightly different shapes. So all of these are the MZG, these three here. But notice this one's the tallest, this one's a little bit shorter, and this one's a little bit shorter. I don't know if that's just variation or these are just different models. They're all Momento Zero Grandes. Interesting. Anyway, let's do some measurements here. We'll start with the Cello Blue. This is about 155 millimeters, and this is also roughly 155 millimeters. It's a little bit longer, maybe 156. And then uncapped, we're looking at about 143, I would say. I'm not going to post these because the owner does not post his pens. I do believe that they post. I'll post my Momento Zero so you can see it. This is about 144, so maybe the difference is just down to the caps. But just so you can see it, they do post. This one's a little bit smaller, but I'll do a separate review of these. Pretty secure posting. Gets quite long. In terms of the barrel diameter, about 16 millimeters. And then for the grip section, we'll go at the narrowest point and then go to the wider point before the threads. 12.1, 12.8. So this is a big grip section. One of my concerns with the number 8 nib is how comfortable is it going to be, because my Pelikan M1000, I find the nib to be slightly too long, or the grip section too skinny, where somehow the geometry of the way that I hold the pen against the paper is not as comfortable as my Mont Blanc 149, which I think is one of the most comfortable pens, especially the most comfortable pen with a large nib like this. But I was actually surprised I had no comfort issues with these. Now, if you have smaller hands, and I don't have big hands, but if you have smaller hands, this number 8 nib may be a comfort issue for you. Now, if you have big hands, you'll probably like this. Now let's do the weight. We'll start uncapped here. About 22.4 grams and about 34.5 grams. So for a pen this size, the weight to me doesn't feel that heavy, but they do feel substantial. They feel very high quality. It's a solid acrylic that's, turned. So it's got some heft to it. They feel high quality. Now, like I said, the owner does not post these. I don't think I would be posting these because they're such big pens. I mean, if we take a look at them compared to the Mont Blanc and the Pelikan, they're even longer than those pens. So really, really big pens. So for the writing sample, going to be using a Papermind Mitsubishi Bank Paper notebook. These notebooks are excellent with fountain pens, and for Blake's Broadcast viewers and subscribers, you can get 10% off with code BB10 at checkout. So this is the Leonardo Momento Zero Grande in cello blue with the number 8 Fenice Nib in extra fine, and this is Mont Blanc Toffee Brown. And the next one, Leonardo MZG. This is Nuvola. And this is the number 8 nib in a fine. And this is Urban Vert Rosetta, I believe. Now, I'm not going to do my typical fast writing or push on them to see how flexible they are, just because these are not my pens. But here's what I'll say. This one with the non-Fenice nib is noticeably softer than this one with the Fenice nib. Now, I don't know if that's representative. This is a very small sample size, but I would say writing-wise, I prefer this one. Now, the extra fine is noticeably finer than the fine, which is good. That's what you want. This one feels a little bit dry to me, but I've been writing with these quite a lot, doing journaling, and I've never had any issues with skipping or hard starting. So it's not really a performance issue, but it does feel a little bit dry. It doesn't show out in the way that the pen writes, but that's just sort of my feeling between them. Both of these are really nice, and for the price, I'm really happy to be getting an in-house made nib in a big size with an ebonite feed. I think these are a tremendous value. So what are my pros and cons for the Leonardo Momento Zero fountain pen? Well, I like the big oversized body. I like that we have a large number 8 14 karat gold in-house nib with an ebonite feed that's also made in-house, piston filling system made in-house. This whole pen, to my understanding, is made entirely by Leonardo. That is really excellent. I don't believe there's another pen brand out of Italy other than Aurora that is making that much of the pen. Now Santini, they might make their piston filler, not 100% sure on that. Let me know if I've got that wrong. Now, overall, it's a very comfortable pen too. A nice big size with a comfortable grip section. I was worried about the large number 8 nib being too long, but the grip section is wide enough that I found it to be very, very comfortable. The price for this is very fair, 575 euros. That is a lot of money, but considering how much of this pen is made in-house, you get the really big nib and you get really what appears to be excellent build quality. So I think that the value is definitely there. Now in terms of cons, proportionally, I do feel like the clip is a little bit on the small side. I also found that this Fenice nib was a little bit on the dry side as a writer. Now that I'm sure can be easily fixed. The number 8 version without the Fenice nib, I think has a nib that looks cheaply engraved, unfortunately. But I would say this is the better writer of the two. It was a bit softer, but ultimately didn't love that. Other cons, I think that Leonardo as a brand gives you too much choice. And this is just my opinion, but there is a book called The Paradox of Choice. And when you have so many different materials and different bodies, it's really hard to, one, make a choice, and the satisfaction you get is a little bit harder. Whereas like, if I want the Mont Blanc with the big nib, I pretty much got one choice and I don't have to second guess or think, oh, did I make the right choice or not or whatever. There's only one. In this, there are, I don't know, hundreds of different versions of this. I just feel like as a line, there's just so much choice. Now, on the bright side, this will go back to the pros. These pens are made in some beautiful materials. They have the Arco celluloids from Omas. They have some beautiful ebonites, and I've seen some amazing Urushi pens with Make and Raiden and all that other stuff. There's just a lot of really, really beautiful pens. So you're spoiled for choice, but they're really making a lot of different versions of pens. But that's pretty much it. Do you guys have this pen? Do you like this pen? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you want to see more fountain pen, paper, and ink videos, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys so much, and until next time.